You know, thousands of things happen every single day. But on September 2nd, the headlines just felt different. You had the president clashing with the courts. You had markets reacting in real time. And then you had tech giants making these trillion-dollar bets on what's next. It was, well, chaotic. So let's try to connect the dots between the political fights, the economic shockwaves, and the crazy technological leaps that really defined this one single disruptive day.
All right, so here's our roadmap. First, we're going to dig into the challenges to presidential power. Then, we'll trace the economic fallout from that. After that, we'll pivot to big tech's massive bets on the future. And we'll see how a legendary investor is trying to navigate all this chaos. And then finally, we'll ask, what does this single day really reveal about the world we're in? Okay, so our story kicks off in Washington. On this one day, President Trump found himself in a face-off with some of America's most powerful institutions. We're talking the central bank, the federal judiciary, and even the U.S. military. This was a multi-front battle over the very limits of executive power.
And look, this wasn't just one conflict. It was three major showdowns happening all at once. An attempt to fire a Fed governor was met with condemnation from hundreds of economists. A landmark court ruling basically gutted the president's entire trade policy, and another judge blocked the use of the military for domestic law enforcement. If you put it all together, this was a broad, system-wide pushback.
The tariff ruling? It really boiled down to a fundamental constitutional fight. The administration claimed it had the authority under an emergency powers law, but the court came back with this powerful reminder. The power to tax and tariff belongs exclusively to Congress. So this wasn't just a simple policy disagreement, it was a constitutional clash over the separation of powers. And the stakes in that third conflict were made crystal clear by this pretty stark warning from the judge. He wasn't just blocking a single deployment, he was putting a caution flag on a future where the military could become, and I'm quoting here, a national police force with the president as its chief. That is a powerful statement about the line between being commander-in-chief and directing domestic law enforcement. Now, of course, these legal battles, they don't just happen in a vacuum, right? They sent immediate shockwaves from Washington straight to Wall Street, and they hit financial markets, federal programs, and the budgets of everyday Americans. So, the first impact? This number, $172.1 billion. That's the annual revenue the government could lose if the tariff ruling stands. All of a sudden, markets had to factor in the risk of the government having to refund billions it had already collected, which would create this massive hole in the federal budget. And that budget uncertainty led directly to this. The yield on the 30-year Treasury bond spiked to its highest level since late July. So why? Well, think about it. If the government has to refund all that tariff money, it's probably going to have to issue a flood of new debt to cover the gap. And more supply of government bonds means lower prices and higher yields, which means higher borrowing costs for the U.S. government. A political headline instantly became a financial reality. But the economic fallout wasn't just on Wall Street. It also hit a lot closer to home. On the very same day, new SNAP rules went into effect, and the CBO estimates that 2.4 million Americans will lose their food benefits every single month. That is a massive shift that directly impacts household budgets, and by extension, the entire grocery industry.
And you know, these cuts could dramatically reshape the grocery business. Right now, Walmart gets nearly a quarter of all SNAP spending, so analysts are predicting that as families lose these benefits, they'll have to become even more focused on value, which is going to drive sales to giants like Walmart, while smaller grocers really feel the pain. Okay, but while Washington and Wall Street were consumed by all this turmoil, there was this whole other universe that was moving at light speed. Over in the world of technology, this was a day of massive investments, aggressive power plays, and just almost fantastical ambition. Just look at this number, $183 billion. Let that sink in for a second. That's the new valuation for AI startup Anthropic, after it closed a funding round of $13 billion. To put that in perspective, this single startup is now worth more than many of the world's most established corporations. It's just a staggering vote of confidence in the future of AI. And it's happening on the same day the government was fighting over legal principles from the 19th century. And Anthropic wasn't the only one making moves. OpenAI bought a software experimentation company called Statsig for over $1 billion. Google dodged a huge bullet in its antitrust case, and now it won't have to sell its Chrome browser. Amazon moved to end its Prime shipping sharing program to tighten up its ecosystem.
And then on the flip side, you had Salesforce stock down 25% on the year, a real sign of the immense pressure on these legacy tech firms to prove they can keep up in the age of AI. And then there was this. Elon Musk declared that nearly all of Tesla's future value won't come from cars, but from its humanoid robot, Optimus. He's predicted this could make Tesla a $25 trillion company. Now, whether you believe him or not, that level of ambition, that focus on a technological future that sounds like science fiction, it just provides such a stark contrast to the grounded political battles happening everywhere else.
So with all this disruption, you've got political uncertainty on one hand and these futuristic tech bets on the other. You have to wonder, what does a grounded, value-focused investor do? For that, let's turn to the Oracle of Omaha, Warren Buffett, and see his playbook in action.
You know, a really clear pattern emerges when you look at Warren Buffett's recent moves. His firm is selling off its massive stakes in giants like Bank of America and Apple. And in their place, it's buying companies like Domino's Pizza and Pool Corp. This shows a really clear pivot away from big finance and tech and toward tangible consumer-facing businesses.
But hey, even the Oracle doesn't get it right every single time. On the same day, Kraft Heinz announced it was splitting up, completely dismantling a mega merger that Buffett himself helped create. His candid response was simply, "I'm disappointed." It's a pretty humbling reminder that in a world full of disruption, even the best-laid plans can completely unravel.
So we have conflict, we have economic anxiety, and we have this incredible technological ambition all happening on one single day. So what happens when we pull all these threads together? What does this day actually tell us about the world we live in right now? Ultimately, September 2nd reveals a tale of two parallel worlds. They're operating on different timelines and with completely different currencies. One world is defined by these institutional clashes, constitutional debates, and immediate economic consequences. Its currency is power and law. The other world is driven by this relentless belief in technological progress, funded by astronomical sums of capital. Its currency is innovation and future value. And on this one day, we saw both of them in incredibly sharp relief. And that leaves us with a final and, I think, crucial question. In this moment of intense disruption, where the rules of the past are being challenged and the technologies of the future are literally being built, who is really in the driver's seat? Is it the politicians and judges debating the limits of power? Is it the innovators dreaming of humanoid robots and artificial intelligence? Or is it the investors, like Buffett and the venture capitalists, who are placing the bets that will fund whatever comes next? It's definitely something to think about.